How does one elevate a screenplay, a potentially rotten screenplay, into something distinctly filmic? I mentioned that William Cameron Menzies' 1951 picture, The Whip Hand, is manifest of this, but even more so is 1953's The Maze. There are several points in this video, several screen caps, which will have one highly impressed, I think, at Menzies' direction and art design, as well as Harry Newman's visceral cinematography. However, the film ultimately winds up being one which is defined by spoilers. All of this build-up, the presence of a maze, sitting outside an ethereal Scottish castle, those unusual angles, the pronounced lighting setup, the maze exudes lots of promise, to be certain. Its fourth-wall narration, delivered by Catherine Emery as the character Edith Murray, elaborates upon what is happening between certain scene transitions, possibly to pad out the exactly 80-minute runtime. So I may just have to spoil the film here. If the goal of this video is to examine what 1953's The Maze is going for, I just may have to. The Maze is a sincere adaptation, screenplay credited to one Daniel Ullman, of a very weird, seemingly spooky and possibly atmospheric horror novel published in 1941, authored by Swiss writer Maurice Sandoz. The text is notable for featuring illustrations from Salvador Dali. So I will read out the brief IMDb plot blurb for The Maze. A Scotsman abruptly breaks off his engagement to pretty Kitty and moves to his uncle's castle in the Scottish Highlands. Kitty and her aunt follow Gerald, this is the Scotsman, a few weeks later and discover he has suddenly aged. Some mysterious things happen in a maze made from the hedges adjoining the castle. What is this mystery? There is a strange little frog creature. He's the secret master of the castle, and Gerald and his ancestors and their servants have been maintaining its existence for generations. It dies at the end, Sir Roger MacTeam as it was known, after falling from a window from the castle's top story. A very potent manifestation of Poe-esque weird fiction, one could say. I find the film fascinating because theoretically this could be handled poorly. I'm surprised the great talented William Cameron Menzies was chosen to helm this picture. It wound up being Cameron Menzies' final film as director, and he died a few years later in 1957 at the age of 60. I think if the average audience in 2022 viewed 1953's The Maze, they would probably think it was silly, definitely by the conclusion. They may very well be captivated by the build-up, the lush lighting schema, and the frightening chill of what might happen next. I think it looks too much like something from the past, from the olden days, ruthlessly ridiculed in television and subsequent internet comedy nihilism from the 1980s/90s onwards, and not necessarily without reason, although most things that come out today essentially just suck as well, and no one would deny that, so why belittling a movie from 1953 is required to bolster one's fractured ego is beyond me. I mean, they aren't wrong to, but I just find it tragic that such a lavish, delicate, considered production, for the very, very most part anyway, is to be reduced to a crude, gluttonous, alright movie, entertain me. It isn't a jester, it's someone's artwork. If someone you knew personally came to you and said, "Hey, look at this film I directed," what would you say? You'd be more inclined to see the film as is, as a ground-up piece of construction and composition. Film has been displaced from this status, which the visual arts, literature, or novels rather, and to some degree music hold on to in our cultures at this time, or so it appears to myself, although some would argue that music is treated similarly. I agree to an extent. I mean, if you don't like the subject matter, you don't like the subject matter. That is totally fair. I don't enjoy many musicals, romantic comedies, or saccharine melodramas. It is what it is. Handful of exceptions, but that is obvious. I just think that film is treated rather unfairly in the arts compared with other mediums, possibly because there is so much divorce between the ideas of a film production, a finished product, and the notion of it being one individual's vision, not just a manicured chaos. It is that too, but what's life?